So let's go to main CSS and let's start styling our portfolio section. So we go to main CSS and again we go all the way to the bottom. The last one was a goals section, right? So we go over here and we create a new line, right? And we're going to say that this is going to be a portfolio section, right? Over here like this. And we're just going to copy this one. And over here we're going to set the end, right? Now after that we're going to create a first rule, right? I'm going to say over here that for the portfolio, right? We would want a background color. Let's say we're going to go with a off-white in this case, right? I'm going to say that this is going to be a white smoke, right? So it's a little bit more gray, right? So, and again, as always, remember now we have to deal with this background, right? So we can just copy the last one, right? What we had is goals font awesome underline, right? So I'm just gonna copy this one and we're gonna paste it over here, and we're just gonna change this one to portfolio, right? So we're gonna say portfolio over here like this, and now you can see that the color is not the one that we want. So we're gonna say white smoke, right? So now we got what we wanted, right? And after that, we're going to create a little bit of padding over here. I'm going to say this is going to be a padding, but we're just going to add a padding to the top like we did before. We're just going to say padding, let's say top, right? We're going to say padding top. It's going to be something like 20 pixels, right? And also we're going to say a border in the bottom, right? So border bottom, border bottom, right? We're going to say this is going to be 6 pixel. Solid. Let's say this is going to be the color of a again the orange one, right? So we're going to go like this, F15025, right? So this is going to be our border in the bottom, right? So now we're done with pretty general rules, right? Let's go and start styling the actual sections, right? And the first what we want to do is actually style these sections, these columns, right? Because you can see that we obviously don't want, again, as always, we don't want these paddings, right? So here we're going to write that this is going to be a portfolio, right? Portfolio ID, portfolio, right? And we're going to say the column, medium 4, right? So that's what we want to style. And we're just going to say that this is going to be a padding left 0, like this. And this is going to be a padding right 0, right, like this, right? So padding left and right, and we're going to say right over here 0, right? But you can see that I actually selected the wrong class because we had a 3, right? So now when we got rid of these paddings, right, you can see that how everything disappeared. Now we also could have written just basically like this, very simple, right? We could have used this padding 0, right? And it would also get the job done. But again, it really doesn't matter how you want it. You can write it padding left and right because this is what we care about, right? It's not really gonna, there's no padding affected over here, right? That's not what we're gonna be dealing with, right? We're gonna be dealing just with the sides, just for our images, right? And after that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start selecting these classes that we had in between, right? So again, I'm just going to make this one a little bit smaller right now. But if you can see over here, this class in between, if I'm talking about, what I'm talking about is this portfolio background, right? So we go back to our main CSS, right? And we're just going to write a portfolio background class, right? Portfolio over here like this, background over here. And we're going to say that we would want to be a background of color, right? So we're going to say background, and we're going to say this should be a RGB, okay, over here like this, and we're going to say this is going to be 0, 0, 0, 0, 7, right? Or 8 or whatever, however you would want, right? And you'll see why it is important that we can choose any color, right? For now, we're just showing you right now how it looks with this type of background, right? But we can obviously change this one around to 255, right? Something like this. and it's actually going to be completely different, right? And actually we're going to only see this at the very end, right? The moment we're seeing it right now, you're actually going to see that we won't going to be seeing this, right? And later on I'll show you how we can actually change these colors if we want something different, right? So let's keep moving on. And over here, we're going to start selecting a portfolio thumb, right? Which is, if we remember, that was actually the class that's inside this portfolio background, right? So we write portfolio, and we're going to say background. Sorry, not background. We're going to thumb, right? This was our class, right? And here we're going to say that this is going to have a height of 300 pixels. But we have added a height for 300 pixels, right? We need to do the same thing over here if we want to get rid of this project, right? Over here in this portfolio overlay, the same thing that we did over here when we were working with our previous work section, right? Remember when we wanted to zoom in into pictures, right? But because we were scaling them, they actually automatically got bigger. What we did over here, we used a property of overflow hidden, right? So the same thing we're going to do it over here. We're going to write that overflow, right? And we're going to write this is going to be hidden. Now you can see that they're actually not there, right? This overlay is not there. And the last thing that we want to do is add over here position. And we're going to say the position is going to be a relative, because again we're going to be using a position absolute for a portfolio overlay class over here. So the next thing what we want to do is over here we're going to say that this is going to be a portfolio, and we're going to select a image, right? And we're going to say that a width should be 100%, right? So we're going to say it like this, and we're going to also say that height is going to be also 100%, right? So both of them are going to be 100%. And after that, we're going to start dealing with a portfolio overlay, right? So we're going to select the class. We're going to say portfolio, and we're going to say overlay, something like this. And we're going to say that this is going to have a position of absolute, right? And again, the reason why we used relative over here with this thumb is because over here we're using the absolute. So we obviously want these overlays to be actually contained within this portfolio thumb, right? We don't want them to actually go outside that. So over here we're going to say top, and we're going to say the top is going to be 50%, meaning we're going to be placing them actually in the middle, right? Then after that, we're going to be creating a left, right? We're going to say 50% to the left, and then we're going to use a transform property, and we're going to say translate, and this is going to be negative 50%, and this is going to be negative 50%, right? So it's going to be something like this. Now, one thing is though that there is some type of margin already, again, preset margin for that heading too, right? So what we would want to do is we would want to select this, right? We would want to say portfolio, and we're going to say overlay heading 2, and we're going to say that we would want a margin to be actually 0, right? Over here we're going to say margin should be 0, right? And over here you can see that it's not overlay, it's overlay, right? Overlay over here like this. So once we move the margins, it's exactly in the middle, right? And then we're going to be adding, let's say we're going to say that this is going to have a font size of something like 60 pixels, right? 60 pixels, right? Then we're going to say that we would want a different color, right? We're going to say that the color is going to be the orange one, right? 15025 over here like this. And then we're going to pretty much have to go back to the overlay, and we're going to have to say that this is going to be visibility hidden, right? Because we only want this to show when we're actually hovering, right? So we're going to say visibility, and this is going to be hidden, right? Something like this, so we cannot see it right now. And now what we would need to do is deal once we're actually hovering over our thumb, right? So we're going to say that a portfolio, right? Portfolio, and we're going to say thumb over here like this, and we're going to say that when we are hovering over it, right, we would want, first of all, we would want this opacity to be 0.5, and let me show you why, right? So once we're hovering, you can see that right away it gets darker, right? And not only we change transparency with this opacity, right? But we're using the fact that over here we set this background, right? So let's say that we change the color, right? Like I was showing you before, that we can change the color, right? So let's say the 255, right? So what's going to happen, you can see that we have this green color right now. So that's the whole point. Not only we're changing opacity, right? One thing is to change opacity. Changing opacity is really simple, right? But by adding over here this background, we can actually change what type of background is going to be showing, right? So if I go back over here and we say 255, right? So now it's going to be a red one, right? So those are the interesting things that we can do. Now I'm going to set them to 0, right? And we're just going to be using this one, right? The way it is. And the last thing that we were going to add is portfolio, and we're going to say thumb over here like this. And when we're hovering, we want the class to be shown, right? So we're going to say the class of portfolio, and we're going to say overlay, right? And we're going to say visibility, and this is going to be visible, right? Not inherit, but visible, right? So over here. So we're going to save this, and what's going to happen, you can see as I'm hovering, not only I have this background, right? This dark background, right? In opacity, but also it's showing that this is going to be our project, right? So this is going to be pretty much it for this section. In the next section, or the next video, I should say, we will gonna cover the OWL, right? The jQuery plugin for OWL, and then we're gonna look how we can use actually this jQuery plugin for OWL to again create some work sections, some quote sections, and actually some sections that are going to be displaying the companies that we work with.